to cloud. Good evening, everyone. Today we're going to speak about Yaakov and Esav. So, what is your life story? Are you able to say in a few minutes, in a couple minutes, what is your life story? Will you be able to say what the next century is going to look like? What are major events in your life? Which developments are going to happen? Do you know? Today we're going to speak that probably we're all left in this narrow, constrained mind. Today we're going to speak how to broaden your life's mission and to still stay in the proper path, and not go off the tracks. In the beginning of the Torah portion, it speaks about Jacob's family. After a hectic life of Jacob, of Yaakov, he finally settles in the city of Canaan, as you see here in text number 1a. These verses come in connection with the previous verses in the portion of the end of the portion of Vayishlach, where it speaks about Esav, Jacob's brother, and it speaks about Esav and his family. But the question is as follows. Why is it important to know about Esav's family? Rashi asks this question in text number 2. Who really cares about the details of Esav's family? Why is it important? And Rashi explains a fascinating explanation. The explanation is as follows. The reason we speak about Esav and his family is to provide context for the story of Jacob. The only character we really care about is Jacob. And therefore the Torah treats the story of Esav very brief and the story of Yaakov with much more details. Rashi brings an example. From Adam to Noach, there was many years, 10 generations. But when it gets to Noach, it speaks about it in detail. But from Adam to Noach, it speaks about it quickly. Again, from Noach to Avram, there's again 10 generations, but we speak very brief about what happened from the times of Noach to Abraham, because it's only important to talk about Avram. But there's a problem with this explanation. In order to speak about the descendants of Esav, it doesn't add anything to speak about all his family. Who cares about a whole family? It's not important to speak about Esav's family in order to get to Jacob. And the question is even deeper. The Torah speaks about, as you see here in text number 3a, we speak about all the kings, 8 different kings. One king came up and got destroyed by the Jews. The next king came up and got destroyed by the Jews 8 different times, starting from verse 33, as you see here in the text. So the Torah counts 8 generations. The last one was in the generation of King Shaul, which was centuries, which actually was in a much later and much further century. So why does it have to speak about it? If it wants to talk about the generation, why does it have to go into the details of the kings and so on and so forth? In order to speak about Esav's children, it wouldn't be important what happened hundreds of generations later on. It's not important for the story of Jacob, because we're trying to speak about all the greatness of Jacob, but we don't have to speak about the kings and everything else that happened there. So get to the point. Speak about Esav in 3 verses, or 1 verse even, and then go straight to Jacob. Why even bother speaking about all the details of Esau's family? What emerges from the story of Esau is that it's very relevant when we speak about the story of Jacob. So in other words, there's something deeper we have to understand here, that when you're talking about Esau, which we know is an evil man, we're talking about it to help the story of Jacob. So let's try to understand what's going on. And as you see here in the text, we have the question, why talk about Esau's children? So let's see here in 4a. In order to answer this, we first have the wrong idea about the story of Jacob. It's not about him and his family that lived in Israel. For this, we don't have to speak about the story of Esau. The story of Jacob is a much longer story, and in fact, the story didn't finish yet. And therefore, because the story didn't finish yet, Esau is a critical character in this story. Now, the story is based on this verse in 4a. So basically, our question today is, why are we speaking about Esau at all when it comes to Jacob? Who cares so much about the story of Esau? We really only care about the story of Jacob. Now, after Jacob and Esau meet after 21, 22 years, they meet each other, they give each other a hug, they kiss each other. We all know that it's a fake kiss, and he doesn't really mean it, as we discussed on Shabbos, that Esau gave Yaakov a kiss, but deep inside he really can't stand Yaakov. Esau tells Yaakov, you know what? Maybe you travel with me. You know, you have so much belongings. Come, let's go travel together. Yaakov says, I can't join you now. Instead, I will meet you later on the mountain of Seir. When is this going to be? We don't see that Jacob ever met up with Esau. So Rashi explains in text number 4b, when the Mashiach comes, Jacob's going to meet Esau on that Har Seir, on that mountain. Many generations later, and it still didn't happen yet. Meaning, when the Torah speaks about the travelings of Jacob and how he settled in Israel, it's not only a story that happened to him. This story continues, and we're still waiting for the end of the story. Yaakov himself says the story is going to end by the coming of Mashiach. And it's far from over. So who's the characters in the story that did not finish yet? Jacob and his children already passed away thousands of years ago. And all the generations in the Torah have already been gone. And he still didn't go up to the mountain. Who's continuing the story? The answer is me and you and all the Jewish people in the world are continuing Jacob's story. So how do we continue all this? Who's continuing Jacob's complete story of entering this mountain? So the story of Jacob with his children, his cattle, and all his belongings that were finally settling in Israel is not only a physical concept, but it's very spiritual. You know, you look at everything in the Torah. It says Jacob he really liked very much lentil soup, and he told his brother to give him lentil soup. Of course, it's a physical thing, but there's something spiritual behind it as well. The same thing is with this story. You know, it's a spiritual idea of Jacob, his father. He's continuing in the paths of his father. Yaakov dedicated his life to bring spirituality into the world. And we are continuing to do this today. The story of bringing godliness in the world is critical. In the story, to speak about Jacob is very critical. Esau is not only a man that's a symbol of Esav, but it's much broader and much more profound. If you go back to text number 3a, right over here in the text where it speaks about all the kings, you know, all this, what's the reason of speaking about all these kings? There's something deeper behind it. It shows on something extremely spiritual. It shows on a special divine energy. In order to understand this, let's discuss a little something from the Kabbalah. Very deep concept. Let's discuss a deep idea from the Kabbalah. You know, this physical world and even the spiritual worlds that exist today are preceded by a different world in the past. You know, Hashem created a world before this one, not a spiritual one. It was a physical world. And it was a spiritual world. Unfortunately, he had to change the hardware and the foundation of how this world was based. You know, unfortunately, we know today you build a building, and if you build it bad, if it's built poorly, it's going to fall in. This is exactly what happened. Hashem's plan in this first world was not completed. What happened was the previous world was called a world of Tohu, which is a world of chaos. And I'll explain to you soon in a moment why it's a world of chaos. This world is called a world of Tikkun, which is a world of order. The student of the famous Arizal, Reb Chaim Vital, explains this in text number 5. You know, Tohu, which is the previous worlds, was a lot of light and too little vessels. The next world was a lot of not so much light, less light, but a lot of vessels. Let me give you a practical example in order to understand what this means. Imagine you're having a work meeting, or you're having a family meeting, or whatever the meeting is with a bunch of people sitting at the meeting. Now, one person gets up and starts speaking, and then someone else gets up and starts arguing with him. And then another person gets up and starts arguing with him. And the meeting becomes completely one big argument. No one is willing to give in to the next person. It is my opinion, and I don't want to hear your opinion. Or there's other types of people in the meeting that not that they completely don't have an opinion. Whatever you say, they listen to. Their opinion is not important even to themselves. They're just ready to do whatever everyone else says. This is not a successful meeting. No one's ready to give in. No one's ready to discuss. I'm not ready to give in to you, and you're not ready to give in to me. Everybody can't wait till the meeting's over, and nothing is accomplished. It's not even, as we used to say, we agree to disagree. It's not even on that level. Everybody's completely selfish with himself, and there's no way of anybody getting along. They're one-dimension characters, basically. There's no order, and there will never be order with such a crowd. According to the Kabbalah, what happens? The vessels break. When the light is too strong and you're too selfish with your opinion, then there is no way with getting along. And this is what happened with the first world. There's too much light, and the vessels, the receivers, couldn't handle it. It wasn't practical. Now, there were sparks in the previous world that fell and came down into this physical world. And this world has more of an orderly fashion. Think of it, let's say that meeting, of everybody screaming and everything. Then they have a normal meeting with some other people, but then they use the ideas from the previous meeting. So Hashem took the sparks, the broken vessels that came from the previous world, came into this order, this world which has more of an order. Where do those sparks go? Those sparks of godliness. This cup has a spark of that godliness. When I drink a tea and make a blessing, right now, this cup and what's in it and myself get uplifted to holiness, because now there's a spark in here, a holy spark from a previous world. So let's talk about, as you see here in text number 6, let's talk about Esav for a moment. Esav, which seems to be a very negative person, actually comes from the world that you see here in the photo. He comes from the world of chaos. Him and all his descendants came from this world. Every king that was around and then replaced with another king all came from the world of chaos. Now, the sparks that fell from the world of chaos never ended up being completely uplifted. And the proof to it is that Mashiach's not here yet. You will find these sparks in places that you least expect. According to the Kabbalah, these sparks are in everything in this world. When you use it for the sake of God, you uplift it. That's why we're in this bitter exile. That's why we've been suffering for over 1900 years, because we're looking for sparks. Your house you live in has a spark. When you put up a mezuzah, you uplift the house. When you eat, make a blessing on the food, you uplift the spark. You have the ability to bring Torah and bring holiness into your home. We have to bring out the godliness from inside these sparks through studying Torah and mitzvahs. You take a pair of tefillin. Where does the tefillin come from? It comes from a parchment. Where's the parchment come from? An animal. Now I uplifted the animal. I uplift the parchment that came from the animal. I'm uplifting my arm because I'm bringing those sparks from the previous world into this world. And then when we uplift all the sparks, we'll bring the world to its ultimate state of fulfillment, which is the revelation of Mashiach. And this is the deeper meaning behind Esav. You know, sometimes you find an evil person. It's possible. Sometimes that real bad person has deep inside holy sparks that have to be uplifted and brought out. From the time the world was created until the complete of all generations, Esav is bad. But in his core, there's a lofty divine energy. Now, it's the same thing. You have to take out the sparks of Esav, just like you're taking out the sparks of every mission that you have to accomplish in this physical world. As he explains in text number 7, quoted from the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, which actually yesterday was the day, or today's continuation of the day he was freed from prison in Russia from spreading Judaism. Now we know why the Torah speaks about Esav and his family. It's part of the story with Jacob. Without this, there's no purpose of making this world as a dwelling place for Hashem. Without this, you're missing the point. We are the children of Jacob. And we're still writing the story to transform the physical world to a place that Hashem can be felt here. The completion will be by the coming of Mashiach, when they will enter that mountain of Har Seir. But till then, there's still many chapters to the story, or hopefully very few left. The purpose of the story is to meet up with Esav. But guess what? It's very challenging. It's challenging to meet the Esavs of this world. How do we know that we're not going to become like the negative people or the negative things in the world. Sparks are buried everywhere. How do you expect me to uncover them and not get stuck with a negative behavior? Well, that's why there's a filter. Let me explain to you the process of this filter. You know, Rashi explains, as we discussed before, Rashi says that Rashi explains that first we talk about Esav, and then we talk about Jacob. Why? It's like if you're looking for diamonds in the sand, you're looking for gems. First, you need to move away the pebbles and the dust, and then you can get to the diamonds. But there has to be something much deeper here in the story. Because if it's so simple, then why does Rashi have to speak about in length all the details that if there's sand and there's pebbles, you have to remove the sand and remove the pebbles. And then when you remove the sand and the pebbles, then you'll be able to get to the diamonds. But why does Rashi have to go into this whole details of how the process works, which is sort of the story of Esav? First, we speak about Esav, which is like the sand and the pebbles, and then we speak about Jacob, which is the diamonds. But why does Rashi have to speak about this filter in such detail? Well, we have to realize what has to be discovered. You know, if you eat lunch, let's say, it's pretty simple sometimes. You eat at lunch, and in the lunch, you're utilizing to uplift into holiness. Meaning you eat it for the sake of Hashem, and then later on you study Torah. So that's simple. But there's other things that are not clear. Some things you don't know. You're not sure. How am I going to uplift it to holiness? Or I'm not sure. Maybe I shouldn't even get involved in it. You know, give an example. If someone used to be an alcoholic and then he's invited out for dinner with friends. So it depends on your circumstances. If you're strong, then go. If you're not, then don't join the party at all, because you might end up drinking alcohol. You know, a lot of times you see good that you want to take out of the bad, but sometimes you see there's nothing in it for you. And that's why Rashi explains the difference between pebbles and sand and then gathering the pearls. Make sure you utilize the filter properly. You could sift it and then come to the pearls. But pebbles could be harmful. You need to go and choose what's correct. And that's why it's so important, all the details. Esav has two elements. Sections that could be uplifted to holiness, and then sections that can't. You cannot say, I want to eat shrimp because I want to be able to serve God better. No, because it's not kosher. There's nothing you could use with that for the sake of God. It actually says here in text number 10 that in the future, pig will become kosher. Believe it or not. Because it will be uplifted to holiness. But that's not now. That's later on. That's going to be in the future. But in any case, there are some sections and parts of Esav that can and have to be uplifted. This all tells us what we started the class with. Broaden your life's mission, which means like this. Many people think my life is a narrow story. I do this and I don't do this. I know these people and I don't know these people. It's a mistake to think that the world is your enemy. Instead of going on this attitude that the world is your enemy, engage with the world around you. Engage with people and uncover their good. But it's very important, and this but is very important. You must turn on the filter. You will not find the pearls if you do not sift. Filters in your life are crucial. It gives you the ability, number one, to reach out. Number two, to spread your wings. And number three, to do a good job. And number four, to maintain our integrity and to stay truthful to our mission, and then broaden your life story. And when you do this, turn on a big filter and your story will be successful and you will bring the Mashiach. So this is our point here today. The point is, we discussed Jacob, we discussed Esav. Filter to get to Jacob. Don't avoid Esav. Utilize him for the sake of holiness. Take Esav and uncover the secrets of Esav. This is what's important. And in our lives, engage with those that you have a hard time engaging with and uncover their holiness, uncover their abilities, which many of us know that many people have a lot of potential and we just have to uncover it. And if we work hard and we utilize this filter, we'll be able to be successful in many manners, in many events that we try to accomplish. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much. How are you, Jeffrey?